Um, okay, so I want to hear as much as you're willing to tell me, but kind of starting from like your background, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah. So,
totally. So I'm actually at my parents' house right now because it's Father's Day. So you're seeing me truly in my element here. So I was born in Pennsylvania in a town called Newtown that's like 40 minutes north of Philadelphia, and I grew up here my whole life. And I went to college about. So my dog is like putting a ball here on my table. Let me just let me just put her inside. I'm sorry.
okay, no, yeah.
Hold on one sec. So, okay, sorry about that.
No
Okay,
worries.
so yeah, so went to school. Actually, only 30 minutes away at Princeton, and honestly, like from a career standpoint, uh, I went in thinking that I wanted to be Joe Wall Street. So, okay, I'm gonna go to Princeton, and that was like one of the things that they tell you, like on your recruiting visit. I went and played football there. Like, yeah, like there's going to be all these awesome finance jobs, and they're super easy to get because we have an amazing alumni network. So I went there wanting to do finance. And there's are you how familiar are you with the finance industry?
Not too. I'm a finance major, but I'm not that familiar because I went into advertising.
Got
So,
it. So there's like this elusive junior year internship when it comes to getting finance opportunities in New York. Basically, all the big banks, so the Goldmans, the J.P. Morgans, Barclays, they bring on these classes of like 40 kids, maybe even more, to do these internships in New York. And then essentially, the people that they hire after college, a large majority are from these internships in the summer. So I applied for like all these internships in New York, and I didn't get a single interview. And I was so annoyed because all my friends who were getting interviews in these jobs, I had better grades in. I was in a more challenging major. I had, I guess, more what I perceived as more impressive extracurricular credentials. And at the end of the day, what it was is that my dad, was just some guy in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. He didn't work in New York or have a bunch of connections in New York. I didn't have any brothers and sisters who were up there, so I didn't really leverage any connections to get these jobs, and it ended up really making it difficult for me and easier for my friends who had those things. So that kind of I guess compelled a reevaluation period for me. It's kind of like, wow, like Wall Street slapped me in the face. I don't even like economics or finance. Like, why am I doing this? It was just because everyone else was. So I was like, well, what do I like? And at the time, I was what I loved was football at Princeton, and so I wanted to work in sports. So that summer, I did an internship at a sports marketing firm called the Gazelle Group that puts on like all of these college basketball tournaments in like for the Coaches versus Cancer Classic, things like similar stuff to like the Maui Invitational for men's college basketball. And I thought it was so boring. And it was like, okay, well, I definitely want to work in sports, I guess, but maybe this just isn't the thing for me. So fast forward after graduation, I started thinking about like, well, what would be the sweetest jobs ever in sports? And for me, it was to be the general manager of an NFL team. I mean, it's basically like real life fantasy football. So I went and I wrote like every single general manager and vice president of what's called player personnel, which is essentially scouting of the NFL, that I wanted to work for them. Wrote them like handwritten letters. And I actually got a few interviews and ended up getting, after graduate, like for when I was done school, getting a job over the summer working for the Jets as a scouting intern. Because that's kind of like how you become a general manager is you first have to become a scout. And I kind of like saw some of the like what it's actually like to be a scout, and essentially you're just watching football tape for like 20 hours a day. And I love that when I was actually on the watching myself, but watching other people sucked. It wasn't as fun. I was like, I don't even know these guys. Like, so I kind of went back to the drawing board and was like, I don't really want this. This is probably like spring of my senior year. I was like, I don't really want to go watch other people play football for 20 hours a day. But maybe I kept telling myself, but I still want to work in sports because football is the only thing I've ever loved besides, a few girlfriends. And uh, we, so I was like, well, what's the second sweetest job? And I was like, well, working with the athletes, doing negotiating, let's be an agent. So I ended up like going to a conference where a bunch of agents were in DC on my own dime, convinced, met this guy, Jeff Feinstein from a company called SFX Baseball. They represent like 150, maybe even more of like, the top MLB guys. And we talked and then I followed up and ultimately I landed a job in the marketing department of working for Jeff of this company SFX Baseball after graduation. So I can, you know, continue talking about that, or and kind of how I ended up in tech, or what. I think that
Yeah,
cool.
no, it's perfect. This story is so like interesting. I'd love for you to keep going.
Yeah, sure. So fast forward, I graduate from school. I move out to Chicago with one of my buddies who got one of those elusive banking jobs, and I start working for this company SFX Baseball. And first day on the job, I literally first thing I do is go to a photo shoot at Victoria's Secret with Gordon Beckham, who was last year's Rookie of the Year. Um, for the White Sox. And I was like, okay, this is the sickest job ever. Like, I'm getting to hang out with, MLB All Stars at Victoria's Secret. This is awesome. Um, and, I got to do a bunch of cool stuff over the next few months, working with the players on like getting like they make a lot of money through like signings. So like lining up signings, like doing some stuff with them for the All-Star game, just working on like a ton of different projects, like even stuff in like the contract negotiation stuff where I was like doing all this research to figure out like different leverage points for the negotiations. And ultimately I was just really freaking bored and like not intellectually stimulated. And it was one of those things where I was like, you look at the very peak of an organization, and I was looking at like the head agent and I'm like, do I want this person's job? And here he was on the road 4 days a week living out of a suitcase. His time was never his own. And ultimately like his job was kind of pandering to 18 to 30 year olds who I didn't consider to be the most mature people. I was like, I definitely don't want this. And that kind of like got me down this whole idea of like, I need to work for myself and I need to work in an organization where, there's no ceiling to the amount I'll be able to move the needle for the company, for my own personal growth. I just really didn't like kind of the structured bureaucratic nature of, what was a 25-person agency. So I started like reading all these books about entrepreneurship and like just like getting obsessed with it. And I think it was a delayed period of self exploration because quite frankly, like when I was in college, even though Princeton isn't like Miami or Florida State or Ohio State or whatever any of these big programs is, the commitment level is the same. Like it was 40 hours a week on top of a pretty rigorous academic schedule. And I really didn't have the time to like really explore like what I wanted to do with my life because I was basically like just trying to get by and perform well. I didn't really have a whole lot of like reflection period. And, because of those commitments, quite frankly, I was like taking the easiest classes I could that were like somewhat legitimate instead of like stuff I was generally interested in. So I kind of like had this like late period of self-directed learning after college when I started reading about entrepreneurship and all these things. Like I always joke around like if you would have asked me what HTML was in my senior year, I would have told you it was a type of Honda. Like, no idea about tech, any of this stuff. So I'm reading all these things and I'm like determining that, okay, this is what entrepreneurship is. I want to be an entrepreneur, but like, I don't want to own a Subway. I don't want to own, like, I guess I could like open a store or start selling something. I mean, I don't have the capital to do that. I don't want to do that. Like, I need to get in this world of tech. So I started like just like looking, like reading blogs, like reading things, and I come to the conclusion that I needed to go and like work at a tech startup. Um, and at the time, like the only one that I had really like looked at uh, somewhat intensely was like Grubhub because it was in Chicago. And one day this is probably like month 4.5 at my job in at the sports agency. I was reading the New York Times and I saw this article about, and I think I might have been there originally direct there via Facebook, about this kid Josh Weinstein had raised $1 million from the investors in Facebook to start this social network called College Only. And the idea was is that Facebook used to be awesome when it was just college kids. Now it's like your mom's on it, your aunt's on it, your kid brother who's in 8th grade is on it. Like, Facebook sucks now. And I was like, oh my God, like this is the next big thing. This is like awesome. And I kind of know Josh because we had a lecture together, a precept freshman year. Like, we weren't friends at all, but I had this class with them freshman year. So I was poking around the website. It's like 9 a.m. in my office. I'm poking around the website. I see Josh's emails listed in their press kit. So I sent him a cold email, and it was basically like, the title was like internships opportunity. And basically it was like, hey, Josh, Scott Britton here. I'm not sure if you remember me, but we had this class together. Anyways, I just saw the New York Times article. Thought it was so awesome what you're doing. I'd love to be involved however I can and help you succeed. Like, any chance you're like looking to bring on an intern or somebody entry level. Josh writes me back, hey man, like, I do remember you. How are you? Thanks for the support. We're actually looking for a potential community management intern. I had no idea what that meant. I've CC'd my COO Shahhead on here to see if uh, it's a fit. And I was like, yeah, sure, sounds awesome. Shahhead, what's up? Let's talk. So like, we set up a call for like around my lunchtime the next day, and I literally had no idea what community management was. I was just like, yeah, sure, sounds awesome. Can I manage communities? And I went and had a phone call with Shahhead in the parking lot during my lunch break, and he's asking me questions like, so why tech startup, why entrepreneurship, why all these things, and it's just like, I just really want to work for a startup, and I'll do whatever it takes, and I'll work for free. And basically he's like, listen, you sound like you have like a lot of, you're hungry. Josh says he likes you. We can't pay you. We can pay for your like commute to New York City and your lunch, but that's it. And I was like, screw it, yeah, let's do it. This sounds awesome. And I quit my job the next day in Chicago, and I told my roommate that I was moving out of our 2-bedroom apartment with 2 bathrooms, floor to ceiling windows, brand new, on a floor with a pool, to go live with my parents in Pennsylvania and commute to New York City every day to work and not get paid. And he thought I was insane. And I thought it was insane that anyone would waste any time being bored or not doing what they wanted to do with their lives. So I quit my job, moved out, drove home on like a Thursday, started commuting to New York on a Monday. And I guess at this point, something I want to bring up is like, this was like really hard to do because, here I was, captained the Princeton football team, had good grades. All my friends were getting paid six figures, and I was going to work for free for some random kid and live at home. And ultimately, like, it was one of those things where it was like I had to do this, and I don't really, I don't really care what anybody thinks because I think everyone's an idiot for what they're doing. If they're not happy and they're not pursuing where they ultimately want to be, so that was kind of my decision making point there. So I started basically first week I commuted in. It took me 2.5 hours from my parents' house to get there, and commuted home. And I did that on like 5 hours of commute each day to New York. Had no idea what I was doing at the job. Like, didn't know what Twitter was, or didn't know how to use it. Didn't know any of these things. And basically, my job was to respond to emails and talk to people on Twitter and Facebook, and that were talking about the site. Um, so after the first week, I was like, okay, this whole commuting thing sucks. I'm gonna like just come up on Monday and leave Friday. So I would pack a bag full of clothes on Monday, and then I would sleep at my cousin's house in Hoboken or on friends' couches or sometimes even the office every night until Friday. And I was just loving the experience because I was like interacting with, like, I was in like a space with like three other companies building things, and I was like doing a lot of reading like after work, and I was like, whoa, like all these people are like building their own companies and they're so young. This is so cool. So I was absolutely loving it and just like drinking from the fire hose of like knowledge about tech and like trying to get up to speed. And I had like one of my favorite books in New York was this thing Never Eat Alone, or I'd read in Chicago was Never Eat Alone. So I was constantly, I really like actually like applied a lot of the things I learned from that. Like every single day at lunch, I would take somebody out in the office and pay for them and learn about their story and what they're doing. And I guess like I just kept doing that and just kept meeting more and more people, and then trying to like, connect people and be this like center of things going on. So I after a month they started paying me $500 a week, and they did that for a couple months, and ultimately I had like probably like $1,000 when I moved to New York. Ultimately I was eventually able to save like probably like 3 or 4 thousand bucks and move up to New York and live with like some of my friends in this crappy apartment. And then eventually, probably like 3 or 4 months in, that $2,000 a month became $3,000 a month to live in New York. And that's like was the last place I ever got financially. But I was there for 8 months, and I learned a ton about what tech was all about, what was going on in the scene, like how we did like product management. I was doing like some biz dev stuff for the company, eventually pivoted. And like the whole time I was like working on like all my different ideas, because I was like, oh, if this 22-year-old can start this, like he's pretty smart, yeah, but like I'm pretty smart and I can do this too. So I was like working on all these ideas, and like the thing that I was probably like most excited about was this concept of subscription commerce, like what Birchbox is, but to do it for health and nutrition supplements, because that was like a thing that I was like super into in college as like an undersized football player, like constantly trying to get an edge, and a lot of the parameters for what makes that business successful were the same. So I decided to leave college only when I basically had an offer, a consulting offer, to basically like work with these guys, and I guess I'll make sense to talk about the background first. So one of the things I did, like probably like month 6 in, was begin to put on these breakfasts, where I would get like 6 to 8 founders of tech companies together, and everyone would state like what their biggest challenge was, and then we'd all like talk through it. And all, I'm just like a lowly employee at a crappy startup at this point. Like, but all I was doing was buying the bagels, getting the space, and then getting cool people together. I was just a curator, and people would come. Um, and one of the guys that came was this guy named Dave Fano, and he had this pretty successful technology consulting firm called Case that would essentially like does like software consultation and software for the architecture industry. But on the side, these guys like really like wanted to build a consumer web company, and they had this product called Who by You. It was essentially like social search. It's honestly a lot of it is it's very similar to like Foursquare at this point, but no check-ins. Just like these are the places that your friends recommend locally. These are like the services, the store owners, um, and they really liked me. And they were basically had told my friend Matt like we want somebody to come on and run this consumer web product, um, and we think Scott's like really like the way he thinks. He seems like a good guy. And I went over and met them, and basically they were like, dude, like, do you want to come on and do like a like run this? And the whole time I was like, okay, I really just want to get out of college only, and I want to work on my side project with my buddy Steve of the subscription commerce company, and these guys will pay me more, and they're gonna give me like more freedom, and I also am gonna get to like build a tech product of my own. And I was pretty disappointed with the product management at the current company, so I was like, this sounds good. So I quit college only, started as a consultant, basically just like trying to figure out how to get the product traction and like what was wrong with it for these guys, and was working on this like subscription commerce company on the side. And I guess a confluence of things happened within that like month trial period. A, uh, I'd literally been getting companies to ship me samples to run these text boxes that I had gotten through cold calling and cold emailing. Um, so I was actually getting product to ship. And at the same time, my friend I was working on with that with went on like a startup bus and had like a Y Combinator interview with these other guys, and was like, hey dude, I love you, but I'm gonna go and work on this Y Combinator company. And I was like, okay, cool. And then at the same time, my the company that I basically went and done all this customer feedback and was basically like, guys, this idea that you have is not going to work. Like, we need to do this whole concept of social search in a place where we can already scrape the data instead of having like users generate like the places they like or whatever. Like, it's just too hard. So we built this prototype of this like product that I wanted to build, that still like was around the locus of, is that even a word, the general area of social search. And basically what it was uh, like, we're gonna identify the articles that are shared in your social stream from the people you follow, like aka your friends, like recommending it, but only around the stuff that you're interested in. So we're gonna actually search all the text of the articles that are being shared, and then we're gonna use a keyword algorithm to determine like whether these articles are relevant to interests that you indicated to us. So like fitness, New York Yankees, yoga, whatever it is. So we built that in like 3 days, and people loved it. And they're like, whoa, this product's a zillion times better. And that was called Sifter. So at that point, guys I was working for were like, okay, this product seems like it has legs. Scott, we're going to give you half the company, and we're going to pay you this salary. And you have 2 developers at your disposal. And I was like, okay, this sounds pretty sweet. So I was foolish enough to think that I could pull this off. And basically for 6 months, I like worked on building this product, Sifter, where I was pretty much doing everything besides pure coding. And I guess I did eventually teach myself some front end development to work on the front end of it. But a few things happened there. The product, I mean, we got it to like a couple hundred people using it and really liking it. But ultimately, like, I realized a couple of really hard lessons. Like building a product is very different from building a company and building a business. Like, anybody can build a product and put founder on their LinkedIn, and that doesn't mean that they can actually build a business, build something at scale. Um, so I realized that, and then I realized I had no idea what the hell I was doing, and that it's just like I don't know anything about this like big data space that we were trying to play in. I just would like throw that word around. Like, do you know how much data when people would ask me the business model, I'd be like, do you know how much data we're collecting and like intent? Like, there's so much you can do with this. There's a million ways to monetize it. I had no idea what I was talking about, and I wasn't really passionate about it. It was just like one of these things like I have an idea, and then this makes sense. So, like, let's build this company instead of like me being truly like really passionate about solving a problem. And some people are just pure executors of opportunities. For me, like, the way that I live my life is such that like that's not enough incentive to me. Like, financial potential financial gain is not enough incentive to me for me to like truly go after something. I need to be very interested in solving a problem. Um, and ultimately, I was doing like we weren't poised in a position to succeed. We had like two developers who were, you know, not great, and nobody was ever going to acquire us because I didn't know what I was doing. Our developers weren't great. Like, and that seemed like the only exit strategy if we got a bunch of users and somebody acquired our technology. It's basically like all these things. Like, I'm in a position to lose. I need to like figure out something else. And I had saw I was on Charlie O'Donnell's softball team at the time, who's like a venture capitalist. He has a fund called Brooklyn Bridge Ventures, and he was previously at First Round Capital. And Charlie like sent out a tweet. I just happened to be on Twitter. It was like, "Hey, know an awesome company looking to bring on like their first BD hire." And I like tweeted at him. I'm like, "Dude, what is this? Like, tell me." And he's like, "I'm like all ears." And he's like, it's single platform. You would crush it. Like, Wiley's the man. Email me." So I emailed him, and he introduced me to Wiley and Kenny Herman, the EVP of BizDev, over email. And uh, basically, we like set up a time to get together, and it just so happened that Wiley was getting married around this time. So I like went down to their offices and met with Kenny, their executive vice president of BizDev, who was like, one of the guys who helped Wiley like start this company. And they told me about what they were doing. They told me about the vision, told me about what the hire was going to be doing, and it all sounded amazing, especially because I was depressed as crap with my current situation of not knowing what I was doing, being responsible for two people, like having a midlife crisis at 23. Um, and the interview went awesome, and we totally gelled. And I sent him a follow up email and thanking him, and then he asked me if I could come down that night and meet Wiley. So I came. I was like, yeah, sure, because he was getting married and go in Illinois. So I was like, yeah, sure. And I came down that night, met Wiley. He told me they wanted to bring me on. I told him I wanted to join, and that was it, all in one day. And I've been at Single Platform now for 1 year and 8 months. And 9 months into the experience, we sold the company for $100 million. I got to work on a ton of deals. Get some like real awesome startup experience, not like work for crappy startups where no one knows what they're doing and it's miserable. Like, I got to work with really, really smart guys who actually know what they're doing, and really develop a good skill set around biz dev and see how something's done well. And it's been amazing. And that's my experience professionally so far.
That's so crazy, Scott. You have such a great story.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, if you would have told me that I had a great story before anything good happened to me, I would have told you I had a very sad story. But yeah, it's I feel really fortunate that it all worked out. And it's one of those things where I think like if you just keep doing the right things, like eventually you'll succeed. You'll have good things happen to you. If you keep like networking a ton, providing value to others, working really hard, constantly trying to learn and push yourself, like eventually like you do enough of those things continuously, like something good will happen.
No, that's so true. Can you tell me a little about your blog too? Because I know that's like kind of a big part. I mean, I've looked at it; it's really awesome. Like, why did you start a blog, and like, where are you at now with that?
Yeah, sure. So truthfully, I started a blog because I thought I wanted to be a VC at one point. And this was when I was at college only. I thought I wanted to be a VC. I'm like, dude, VC sounds sick. Like, just go and like have coffee with entrepreneurs all day and hear their cool ideas and pick which ones you like. Like, that sounds awesome. Um, and I was getting together with this VC at Thrive Capital, and he told me, he's like, dude, if you really want to do this and like get an entry level VC job, you need to like have a better digital presence. You need to start a blog, and you need to like be active on Twitter. And so I started a blog, and I picked the name Lifelong Learner. Like literally, I just like thought of it one day. I was like, oh, that's a cool name, whatever. Like I like to learn a lot. Like didn't really like think about like what's my blog gonna be named, all this thing. Just started, threw up on Tumblr, and started writing with the idea that like I needed to write to become a VC. And I think my first post was literally like my first three posts were like only just like little blurbs. Like one was like only like ask a question if you have a solution. Like a good way to make friends in a co-working space is to make brownies and bring them to people. And the third one was like I think that aggregators are a cool business model. Like literally just random stupid stuff. And I just kept like this practice of blogging going. A, because I enjoyed it. B, because I thought it was important for this like job that I ultimately did not want to do but thought I needed to do. And C, because I started getting like a little bit of positive feedback, probably like 5 or 6 posts in. Like people were like, dude, I saw your post, I thought it was cool. And I was like, whoa, somebody's actually reading this? This is kind of cool. Um, so I guess like my mom just came out. So I guess I take that experience to today. So I've written like over 200 posts. I have, I guess, over the time of the blog, I've reached about 200,000 people, like so 200,000 unique visitors. I have just over 500 email subscribers, and it's been like really really cool. And I guess like so much amazing opportunities have come to me through it. And I guess like what I've realized is like I love writing, I love teaching. I've become a better writer all through this process of just continuing to write about things that I learn. And I've just gotten so many cool opportunities. I've started to make money online from my blog, and really, really like it's taught me just a ton about myself, and also taught me a ton of skills about like digital marketing and stuff. So it's been an awesome experience, and anyone anyone. I don't care if you want to be a baker. Like, I think everyone should start a blog because it's just been so rewarding for me.
That's great. Thanks, Scott, for sharing everything with me. Your story's awesome and
Sure,
like
thanks.
gonna be really cool for people to hear and like inspiring.